Hi! So, picking up from where we left off, we're in Japan and we're still in Tokyo. We decided to take a day trip out to Mount Fuji, where on the train, I ripped the Ectar 100 I'd shot in Nico straight out of the canister, and then pulled it out and stuffed it into a beanie, which is where it lived for the rest of the trip. You can see all of that in the last video, but here's a brief summary of how that went. I decided to follow up that brilliant decision with another. I loaded up Portra 800 into the OM1. The train ride out was spectacular. Seeing Mount Fuji just gradually become more visible as it came out behind other mountains and buildings as we went by on the train. We didn't really have a plan for Mount Fuji, we just sort of got there and grabbed a coffee. And then picked a spot reasonably far away so we could walk around the town and take some photos.
Is that a video or a photo?
I will try and be brief because almost this whole roll was just photos of Mount Fuji. I'd really wanted to see it the last time I was in Japan and missed it somehow. And I'm sure after 36 photos of the same mountain, it's gonna get a little exhausting. We picked this spot. Jimmy had done some research on the area and worked out that this would be a pretty cool spot to see the sunset. So we tried to time it out that as we walked around the town, by the time we got there, it would be about sunset and then we could just catch a bus back to the train station. So we just started making our way there, working our way through the back streets. We kept moving and made our way across the bridge that goes over the lake. And I managed to get this photo of Mount Fuji with the ferry just perfectly timed as it went under the bridge. On the other side of the bridge, we stopped by the edge of the lake and just took in the view for a while. We were shooting directly into the sun, so the photos aren't the best, but it was a pretty cool experience. Arguably one of the best things about shooting film today is the time between taking the photo and then seeing the photo. Even when I got these photos back from my local lab here in Melbourne, hey Light Supply, what's up? I think that time away from the photos is really helpful for some perspective. Even some of these ones I wasn't really sure about when I got back are now some favourites. Despite the serious lens flare on a lot of these photos, I like a lot of them. Just behind this, up on the path, I did manage to get this one of Mount Fuji through the trees. and I'm really happy with it. The framing of the trees, the deep focus, the ferry just perfectly in the gap, or the boat, as I was calling it when I was way too excited about it. But I like it. We were starting to look for somewhere to eat, so we found a spot that was a bit closer to where we wanted to end up for sunset. We ended up getting yet another amazing ramen from this place. I'm not sure what it is about this photo, but it is working for me. And then we just posted up on the lakefront and watched the sunset over Mount Fuji. Oh, and remember when I lied in the last video and said I only used that long lens one time? I used it here too, which I think really helps sell the scale of Mount Fuji. I'm sure there's places like that here in Australia, but I don't know, that was something I've never really experienced. Like, the further I got away from it, it seemed to just get bigger. Highly recommend. If you're going to Japan, here's a secret insider tip. See Mount Fuji. I was dumb. On the bus back to the station, I did manage to get this one on the Lumix S5 too. I also should have got that photo that's illegal now too. The next day I was out grabbing some film from a place pretty close to the hostel and realised they did have quite a few film cameras for sale. I'd like to say it was just gas, but between the issues I'd started to have with the OM1 and the fact I'd be able to use all my lenses with it, as well as the price compared to what I was seeing on eBay for the same camera, it was pretty easy to convince myself to pick up this Olympus OM4. That night we did not take any photos. We kind of did a convenience store crawl, and as a bonus, Jimmy found his favourite sign ever. The next day we were headed to Hakuba to go snowboarding. I hadn't been to the snow in 10 or 15 years or something. But I will say this part of the trip was probably more about snowboarding and, let's be honest, drinking. So I don't have a lot of footage or photos from the first few days. But on the first night I did have a roll of Portrait 800 in the OM4 and I got some pretty decent night photos. I got this one of the bar we would end up eating and drinking at pretty much every night we were there. To me, I would say it's probably a folio shot. I really like the way the neon sign is rendered on the film. It's just a nice scene.
Whatever.
But I can't really decide whether I like the door open or closed. I think open. A little bit more inviting. The next few days in Hakuba looked a lot more like... But New Year's Eve was pretty rough weather for snowboarding, so we just hung about the area and walked around taking photos. These are fine, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's a hazy Japanese forest in winter. What's not to love? But I just don't really think I captured anything noteworthy here. That night we had dinner at Nanjane again. That's how you pronounce it apparently. And snow started falling just before midnight. So we just hung out with everyone and celebrated New Year's Eve. And the next day I was moving pretty slow. Jimmy was downstairs on the phone. I was sitting on my bed, probably watching Grainy Days. And then...
Breaking news for you this morning, just frightening scenes coming out of Japan on this New Year's Day. Japan's west coast reeling after a powerful 7.5 magnitude quake caused widespread damage, triggered tsunami warnings and 4-foot tsunami waves.
So that was pretty f***ed up. I was on the 3rd floor, so the shaking was pretty intense. I've never been in an earthquake like that. Not a fan. I stood in the doorway because that's what I've seen people do in movies. And after a minute or two, after it started to die down, I just ran to find Jim. Thankfully, we were all okay. That night, everyone was pretty jumpy. The alarm went off a few more times throughout the evening as there were still tremors rolling in. We got dinner and kept an eye on the news. I told my family what was happening. Geographically, we were quite close to the epicenter, so the shaking was a lot. Luckily, because of our elevation, we didn't have to worry too much about tsunamis. I suppose if the snow had been heavier, we would have been worried about avalanches. The reality of the situation was that it was just a tragedy. So I don't really like it being part of this content. It was just something I experienced on this trip, and it would have felt strange to skip over it or pretend like it didn't happen. It's really weird to be in something like that affects so many people, and you're just powerless to do anything about it. The next day, before we checked out of the hotel, I finished up the Portra 800 in the OM4. But I did already have some Kodak Gold in the OM1, so I just took that and went for a walk around the area to take some photos while we waited for the bus that would take us to the train station. I love the way this area looks on Kodak Gold. There's definitely some keepers in here. I'm surprised it took me until the last day while we were in Hakuba to walk up there, but I did make my way up to the Olympic Park. I think it was built for the 1998 Winter Olympics, but it was really peaceful. There was a father and son playing in the untouched snow at the bottom of the ramps. It's just a nice moment in a beautiful setting. After Hakuba, we made our way to Osaka. But that will have to be for next time. And if you've made it this far, thanks for watching.